Okay, we are live.
Good evening, everyone. This is Sakar here from ForOptom. So we're just waiting for our moderator to come. So once our moderator comes, then we'll start the session. Please wait for a while. Once the moderator comes, then we'll be starting our session. So if you have any queries from the beginning, then you can type it in the chat box here. We'll be seeing your queries and then we'll discuss it during or at the end of the session. So please, if you have any queries, you can just type it in the chat box there. So before our moderator comes, can we just give a brief introduction about our panelists? So can we please have a introduction here, sir? So starting with Mr. Asik, sir, here. Can you please introduce yourself with the audience here?
Hi, so I'm Asik Pradhan, and I'm basically at the final stage of my Master of Philosophy at Queensland University of Technology. And maybe once I complete this, from next year, I'll be joining PhD. So currently, I'm working with melanopsin visual function and its significance on the chronobiology of diabetic individuals. And well, I've been a graduate of optometry well back in 2004, and after that I worked in and outside Nepal in the field of optometry and lecturing, tutoring various optometry student batches, and I completed my master's from India back in 2016, and since last year I'm with Queensland University of Technology.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your introduction. So can we move ahead with the introduction with Mr. Keyur here? Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Hello, everyone. I'm Keyur Savla. I'm currently a PhD student. I'm a rising fourth year at University of Alabama at Birmingham. And my journey has been, I finished my optometry from Lotus Eye Hospital in Mumbai, India in 2016. Then I was a faculty at Bhavika Rai Institute for about a year. And in 2017, I joined UAB for my PhD. And since then, I've been working with Dr. Andrew Pucker on toric multifocal contact lenses for myopia control. That's my area of research. And yeah, hopefully, after all of this COVID-19 issue sorts out, I will graduate in about 2 or 3 years' time now. So that's all about me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the brief introduction. So moving ahead, can we have your introduction, Nikhil, sir?
Hello, everyone. I hope you are all safe during this pandemic. I'm Nikhil Sharma. I've done my bachelor's from All India Institute of Medical Sciences in optometry, and then I did clinical ophthalmology and vision research, master's in that, and from Glasgow Caledonian University. And currently, I'm a PhD research scholar at GCU itself. I started last October, and it's been 6-7 months since this PhD. And currently, I'm working on investigating the role of demodex mites in ocular surface diseases.
Thank you very much for the introduction, sir. So we have Manaswi as well with us now. So can we complete our introduction with Mr. Ankit now, and then we'll move ahead with the session.
Hello, everyone. Uh, hope you all are safe in this pandemic situation. And I'm quite happy that we are actually going to discuss a topic which is very useful for optometric profession, because a very few of us have opted for this PhD, and the awareness of optometry is quite low in India because it is a developing country. So I will be talking of more of PhD in India. And if you have seen me earlier, I have completed my bachelor's in 2011 and master's in 2013 from Veer Narmad University, Gujarat. I have joined a PhD in 2016, and my topic of PhD is the observational study or a comparison between two LASIK procedures. One is customized LASIK surgery and another is standard LASIK surgery. In that, I am actually going to see which LASIK surgery is good in terms of higher order aberrations and lower order aberrations. So that is my topic. And it is almost 4 years of my PhD, and almost within 6 months, if this pandemic situation is over, I will be able to submit my thesis. So let's see and hope for the best for today's session.
Sir, thank you for the introduction. So Manaswi, can you hear us now?
Yes, am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
Manaswi, you can please start the session now.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I apologize sincerely for the technical error on my part. And moving forward with the session today, I just like to begin by welcoming everyone to the ForOptom Optometry Updates Expert Live Panel Discussion. And today we have with us esteemed optometrists pursuing higher degrees in the fields of optometry in 4 different countries to discuss with us about pursuing higher degree in optometry. And this session is currently live on YouTube. And if our audiences have not subscribed to our channel yet, please go ahead and hit this red subscribe button right now. My name is Manashwi Karki, and I will be moderating the discussion today. Now, I believe that we're done with the introduction to our panelists here. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of our panelists to the discussion today as well. So let's just begin. I'd like to start with the most basic and yet the most important question, why? So starting with Mr. Keyur here, why did you choose to go for a PhD?
So that's a long story, but let's put it in the shortest form possible. I wasn't aware that something like a PhD in vision science or optometry exists until almost my year of graduation. In 2016 was when I came to know. And at Lotus, we have to do like a bachelor's research project. And I thoroughly enjoyed the process. And in India, or at least where I was graduating, the only options I had to do further studies were like clinical masters, and I was not really keen on doing clinical masters. So, and I had guidance of Dr. Vishwanathan Ramasubramaniam, and he was like, you can do a PhD. I was afraid as to like, okay, going to USA is going to be expensive. I don't have the funds. Why would they want to keep me? Like, why would they want to teach me, etc.? And he helped me a lot. But the whole bottom line is that my passion for research, that was primary. And second, that I really wanted to be on like, I know the clinicians are the heroes of today's, but I really wanted to be on the forefront of discovery of new techniques, new methods. And that was primarily the reason I chose research. And the best way to do research freely is to do a PhD.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keyur. Similarly, moving to Mr. Nikhil Sharma, why did you choose to pursue a PhD?
Well, from my experience, I had no idea what to do after doing bachelor's. But eventually I took up for a master's program, and that's where I realized my specific interest in tear film and ocular surface disease. And I also realized the need to develop certain skills where we have to solve problems on our own. that's where I realized that I'm lacking some stuff to, push myself to the next level. So these things fueled me up to take up for a PhD project, and eventually I got the chance to do one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nikhil. Moving on to Mr. Ankit, would you like to tell us why you chose to go for a PhD? So you might want to unmute.
Sorry. Okay. So is it audible now? Clear? No?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So if you see my CV, or if you see my resume, you will see that I am a assistant professor since 2011. So there are three things that choose me for a PhD. One is my eager to learn more. So if you see, I have did my graduation, post-graduation, and 2 fellowship, but the last degree which was left is PhD. So I have just taken that initially. The second most important thing why I have choose PhD is because I am a teacher. If I am good in research, then and then only I can able to teach my students how to be a good researcher. Third thing is, if you see the Indian scenario and if you see the UGC guidelines, you will see that uh, almost after 2021, there is a mandatory need to be a PhD holder to keep yourself in a position of any professorship. So like if you want to be an assistant professor or associate professor, or if you want to upgrade your level, you need to be a PhD holder. So it is the first and foremost thing for me that I should be a PhD holder. Otherwise, my job obviously will be under risk. So that is the reason I have actually choose my PhD. Okay,
Thank you.
Actually, it has been necessary. Like, suppose if somebody in India wants to be a professor in future, now if you see the latest news given by UGC, you will see that Mr. Javadekar, who was the HRD minister at the time, have said that after 2021, if you are not holding a PhD degree, you will not be a professor. So I hope you all, those who are listening, will definitely think of doing PhD if you want to be, if you want to make your career in academics.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ankit. Now moving on to Mr. Asik. I think you have chosen to pursue M.Phil. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
Yes. And what was the reason behind your decision to pursue M.Phil?
Well, basically, most of the things has already been pointed out by our 3 guys. So the thing is, basically, just to narrate it out, there's nothing much different about, when you compare M.Phil or PhD. The only thing is, like, here in Australia, basically, for a candidate to get a degree of PhD, you need to carry out 3 separate experiments, which may or may not be correlated with each other. But in getting a Master of Philosophy degree, you need to carry out one particular experiment independently, and you also have an option or a flexibility of articulating to a PhD from master itself. So you need not complete, rather than completing masters, you can also articulate to a PhD as well. So basically, I'll just to summarize, like, whatever the things, most of the things it has already been highlighted. There are 5 basic things for me: my interest or my drive for research, and my willingness to become an expert in my area of interest, and enjoying the academic environment, because sometimes whenever you are working for a long period of time, because like I've had a clinical experience about 14 or 15 years now in the field of optometry, so you kind of get fed up with every day of routine work, like 9 to 5 work. So you might want to get back and enjoy the academic environment, and basically making the use of available opportunity, and also trying to develop the important transferable skills, because like most of the time, whenever we do novel things, we kind of do a translational research. So once the translational research comes into a clinical practice, it is quite overwhelming and quite satisfying. So basically these are the things that I
So talking about how it affects the clinical factors, like you said. So what is the significance of M.Phil, especially in the field of optometry, in terms of opportunity as well as the career development? Could you just gloss over that?
Yes, well, it is just a stepping stone for your PhD. Well, it like if your project can be pulled along, so it may be articulated into a PhD itself. So you need not spare 1.5 year into M.Phil degree. Rather than you can go ahead and once you articulate, you can directly become a PhD scholar and complete your candidature within 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Asik Pradhan. Moving forward to Mr. Nikhil Sharma, what is the significance to you and as well as to your career by the PhD?
See, PhD in any field means filling up gaps in the knowledge or to contribute towards new knowledge. And in case of optometry, we have a wide variety of subjects to explore from. We have wide variety of sections in our eyes which still needs to be explored. So doing a PhD in a particular topic is just filling up those gaps like pieces of puzzle in a broader picture, which will benefit the entire eye care fraternity. And on top of that, you'll also get to learn new skills which come very handy in your daily life-to-life experiences. So that's what my perspective is.
I'd like to go to Mr. Keyur and ask you what would be the significance of PhD to you in the field of optometry and how it might help a student, in terms of their career. So we might want to unmute.
As Ankit has already mentioned, that it's about filling gaps in the knowledge, but primarily from career perspective, I think one, in USA, I would need a further degree to go ahead and pursue a job, etc. Because Bachelor's of Optometry from India is considered as a college degree. It's not considered a professional degree. So I needed an additional degree, maybe a master's in vision science or a PhD in vision science to pursue any kind of job in optometry over here. So that was the primary goal. But other than that, I think a PhD opens up doorways to a lot of opportunities. One of the primary skills that is most sought after by universities and industries and all sorts of professions is communication. At least this was the data in 2016 that they showed. A PhD empowers you with the ability to communicate and communicate effectively in the field of science. And after coming here, I've realized that I do not have to stay back in academia to enjoy research, etc. So yeah, I think the main reason is if someone, as an aspiring student, if you are an optometrist and you are not really happy with the cookie cutter setup of, okay, you finished your optometry and you have to do clinics, like either independently or under an ophthalmologist, etc. A PhD is definitely advisable because it opens doorways to this multitude of professions. I have seniors who are now currently in law firms because you can use your PhD there. And there are seniors who are currently working for the government because they are helping policy making, etc. So yeah, it just opens up a lot of doorways career-wise.
Mr. Ankit, Varshney, you have already said that you are in the field of education, you're an assistant professor, and you wish to continue that, right? So what are the requirements that one needs to fulfill to apply for a PhD in India, and how does one apply, and how long does it take to complete the course? So unmuting the mic, please.
Okay. So if you see the guidelines of India, like UGC have given the guidelines for each and every curriculum for doing PhD. So if you see, the minimum requirement to opt for PhD is master degree in any field. So if you have a master's or post graduation in any field, then you can opt for PhD. Another thing is, now there are two options. Like if you are having a master's, then you should go for entrance for PhD. Or if you are having a master's with any of your national eligibility test or state eligibility test, you will be directly exempted from your entrance exam and you can directly apply for your PhD. So there are two differences in India where you can apply. So like suppose I was not having any of the national eligibility test exam or any state eligibility, so I have to appear for the entrance exam initially, and after appearing for entrance exam, if now the criteria is if you are having minimum 50% of marks in entrance, then and then only you can go for another level. Or if you are having any state eligibility or national eligibility test, you can directly go for next level. So after going to next level, the another thing is you have to give the proposal, research proposal to the university. So there you will have a panel, expert of panels who will see your proposal and will decide on what topic you are choosing and what is the actually importance of that topic. So if it is good, then they will again grade your marks accordingly, and they will make a merit, and then they will give you the either the registration for PhD, or they will say that you need to improve more and you can opt for PhD next year. So because if you see in India, initially there was very few universities offering PhD, so the guides were also very less in India. But now because major ophthalmologists are also becoming guide for optometrists, and even optometrists are also been graduating for PhD, so the guides are more in PhD. So the seats has been increased, and thus if you are suppose if you are what we call, if you have a very less marks in your merit, and then also you can opt for PhD in India, because you have more and more of PhD guides right now. So that is the next level. Another thing is, once you have given the research proposal and it has been sanctioned from the university, then another thing is you need to give they will give you certain time limit for ethical approval. So then you have to take the approval from the ethical committee, and then after ethical committee approval you can proceed your research work. So after that, the period of a PhD is 3 years, that is minimum in India, and you can extend that for almost 3 years after that 3 year of minimum probation period in India. So like now again there are criteria in PhD. First is full-time PhD, second is part-time PhD, and third is your what we call you can go for independent research. So a full-time PhD holder can opt for at least 3 year, and they have to be under their institute only. For part-times, they can opt any other university apart from where they are working, but they have to take the NOC from that department or institute that they are going to do PhD from another university. While for independent researchers, they should have at least 10 years of experience in teaching as well as research. Then and then only they can opt for a PhD. So these are the criterias from where you can know that whether to go for a PhD or not. But the minimum criteria is master's degree in India. So that is the thing. Any other thing that you want to ask me apart from this?
Apart from this, not right now, so we'll be coming back to you. Right now, I'd like to go to Mr. Nikhil Sharma. I believe you are pursuing PhD from Glasgow. Am I right?
Yes, Mphil.
Yes, and you have also completed masters from there. So, what was the process that you underwent, and what are the requirements that one needs to fulfill if one wishes to apply?
So for masters or for PhD?
The transition that you made from your masters to your PhD, as well as for the masters for any other aspirants.
Okay, so if you are looking for the masters, you can directly go onto the university website, and the program which university offers was clinical ophthalmology and vision research, but now the nomenclature has been changed. It's investigative ophthalmology and vision research, and there's a prerequisite for that, that a person should have a bachelor's honors in optometry. So once you fulfill this criteria, you can always fill up the application form. Apart from that, a candidate is also required to have a proficiency in English language, which is in form of an IELTS certificate. And you should also have your statement of purpose, a kind of letter which indicates why are you motivated to do a master's program. So once you fulfill these criteria, you can directly apply to the university website, and they will respond back to you in almost 3 weeks of time. Uh, for the PhD, if there is a similar process, you can either go on to directly to university website and search for projects. So there are basically three types of projects which are available in universities here in the UK. Some of them, they are fully funded, while others are partially funded or self-funded projects. So once you shortlist, depending upon your finances, you can select a project and then formulate a research proposal and then send it over with the application form. The supervisors are also keen to look at your educational background educational qualifications. So obviously for that, a master's degree is a must, and certificates from your previous supervisors recommending your proficiency or your caliber to conduct research. And apart from that, you can also take help from an educational consultant, or if you're not sure, you can filter out PhD projects on certain um, uh, search engines like findaphd.com or phdportal.com. So once you sort out all of these things, you have to make a research proposal and send it over to the supervisors. They'll have a look at it, and if selected, they'll call for an interview. And they also look at candidates' previous research or teaching experience, since a PhD candidate is required to do some sort of teaching as part of their PhD. Apart from that, if you have a couple of publications, that always gives a bonus over uh, other candidates. So that's how you proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Nikhil. And now I'd like to move on to Mr. Keyur and ask you. You're pursuing your PhD from University of Alabama, right? So, what was your process? What did you go through for the PhD?
Um, so, so I think the process for PhD in USA varies from university to university, and the best way is to either look up that university's website and look for the information there. Sometimes after coming here, I've realized university websites aren't that frequently updated. So you might want to reach out to someone who's like the administrator or the director of the program and try and understand the process from that, because they frequently change guidelines. The guidelines, at least at UAB, have also changed since I applied, but here are the minimum basics that I think most of the universities will look for, and then I'll give you where you can do additional work to make sure that you get in. So the first thing you will need is about a year's time before the fall admissions. So most of the universities admit students in August. That's when the program starts for most of the universities. So if you're planning to apply for next year, that is 2021, you might want to start working on it right now, because that's the whole span of time you need. Majority of the work will be until December itself. You will need an English proficiency test. USA and Canada, I believe, go for either TOEFL or IELTS, depending on the university. Other than that, there is a trend to move towards removing any other sort of proficiency test. So when I applied, UAB required a GRE, but after my batch, that was canceled out. So you don't need a GRE to apply. But having those scores will not help or hurt your application. It just adds on to it. You will need a statement of purpose that is explaining why you really want to do a PhD, and you would need recommendation letters, 3 at a minimum, I believe, from from different places that you have either worked or have studied, etc. And these are the primary things you will need to finish your application. The applications are due either start of December, somewhere between December to January, and the only educational requirement you need is 16 years of education in India, or any other country that you want to pursue this from. 16 years of education, and you don't even need an optometry degree. You could have done your bachelor's in music, or I don't know, arts, for whatever your interest be. So that is the only other requirement. Apart from that, there are additional requirements that some university might require. For example, a master's or a teaching experience, etc. But those are rarely cited on the website. So you want to reach out to the administrators to find out if there is any particular additional requirements. But the thing, in my experience, I've seen what helps the most is having some sort of a research experience. And regardless of how many hours, days, months you worked in research, having abstracts in international conferences. That's the fastest and the easiest way to ensure or to tell the committee who is looking at your profile that I am interested in research and I have done some work in this and I know what I'm getting into. What I think the committees over here fear the most is that you would get passionate about this and you would join, but this would not be your calling and you would end up wasting your resources and their resources. So showing in some style and form that you are serious about this and this is not just one day you woke up and you decided to apply for it would be definitely helpful. So abstracts, and even better if you can get publications, that's the ultimate. That is like almost guaranteeing you an admission. But yeah, the research takes a lot of time in terms of finding which universities you want to apply to, etc. And from my experience back in 2016, 2017, not a lot of consultancies in India do know what to do with someone who's looking for a PhD. They will always tend to guide you towards master's or some other program like public health. So yeah, it's a struggle to do all that research independently, but it's worth all the effort.
Thank you, Mr. Keyur. Now moving on to Mr. Asik Pradhan. What was your process to apply for M.Phil and what was the requirement?
Well, basically, it is quite similar to earlier stories what these guys have already shared with you. So basically, you need to do your personal research about specific supervisors, and you need to look at specific supervisors that actually matches your interest, and you might need to spare some time, or doing specific studies, like what their specific research interests are and whether it is aligning with your interest as well, and try and understand what their basic research skills are and understand the environment. So the other thing is, like, you might need to correspond to them, or maybe like initially correspond to the research department of the specific university that you want to pursue the education from. And apart from that, you might independently want to have a correspondence done with the specific supervisor, the tentative supervisor, and work out the tentative mini research proposal, because you need to have one mini research proposal ready when you are going to apply for master's, or master of philosophy or doctor of philosophy. Now the other thing, very important thing, what we had, I think Ankit made a notice of, like, it's whether a 4-year or 3-year or a 5-year of completion for a PhD, and it depends upon different countries. So like, if you see in, I think Keyur would be in a better position to say that, like in USA, it requires 5 years to complete PhD, whereas in UK or Australia, or maybe like even in New Zealand, it is a maximum of 3 years of candidature, which may be at times extendable up to 4 years. So, well, basically these are the things. So you need to have a English language test, and a mini research proposal, and your updated CV. And first and foremost, very important thing that you should take a note of is your publication. Like, especially if you have a publication in high impact factor or moderate impact factor journals, would be excellent thing, because you, like, for aspiring optometrists who want to pursue higher education in developed countries, they always look for scholarships, and to be to go and to become successful in the scholarship round, you need to have your publications in your hand. So that would be an added asset always. Thank you.
So sorry, I would just chime in for a point that Mr. Asik pointed out, that yes, USA PhDs are much longer, but at the same time, the real benefit, or what I really enjoy, or rather I wasn't able to do back in India, is come up with a project and find an advisor, because they expect, in USA, they expect you to come here and then find your way. So that really helps if you're really clueless as to what you want to do. as I had worked in myopia before, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue. At the same time, 5 years is not the limit. It appears majority of the students do graduate in the 4 to 6 years range, but there are students even at UAB, depending on your project, it's not like they will make you stay, but there are students who are finishing their 8th year as well. So, but again, they are working on models that take much longer to finish, and they knew what they were getting into while they were getting into it. So it's all planned out, but at the same time, yes, it's very flexible.
Mr. Keyur, I'd like to ask you one more question. Did you pursue a PhD after your bachelor's?
Yes, so I finished my bachelor's in 2016, and then as I said, I came to know about PhD much later, and it took me about a year's preparation or application and all of that. So I was working as a faculty at Bhavikara Institute for 1 year, and then during that 1 year, I got my admit to UAB. So yeah, it's immediately after my bachelor's. Though there is no office, it's said that I got admitted to PhD in vision science. The process internally is very similar, but there is no transition process like it is for anyone in Australia or UK. So you do get admitted to a PhD in vision science, but you would do all the activities that a master's student would do for about first 1.5 to 3 years, depending on how fast you get through all of that. And then there is at UAB, the process is quite, and this process might differ university to university, but it's more like you have to do a written exam and an oral exam. And the definition of that exam can vary. At UAB, it's like you have to write down your research proposal, which basically your mentor and your whole committee has helped you write down and present that research proposal. But at other universities, I've heard that there are extensive written exams on your knowledge in optometry and all that you've learned in the first 2 years, and like a different proposal, etc. So yeah, that process may vary, but it's very unlikely that once you've entered the program in your first year, you would be like, stopped or asked to not continue after your master's area of work is done. So you are a PhD student throughout. The only transition you make is then you become a PhD candidate after that so-called exam.
So I'd just like to understand the distinction here. Like Mr. Ankit has pointed out that in India, to pursue a PhD, we would need a master's degree. Am I right, Mr. Ankit? Is that what you said? And likewise, Mr. Nikhil Sharma has also completed his master's, and then he has moved on to PhD. So how different are these degrees? Because you have made the transition from bachelor's to the PhD, and how different are these degrees in comparison?
So you are trying to understand the difference in master's versus PhD? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
So basically, because some of the countries or universities require masters for PhD, and we have some provisions in optometry where, like we can directly go for the PhD after the bachelor's. So how are these programs different, if they are different at all, and how does it benefit?
So I think internally, on paper, they appear as if I'm going from a bachelor's to a PhD directly. Internally, I think the process is almost similar. What ends up happening, or why the duration is at least a minimum of 5 years at USA, or not a minimum, but an average of 5 years, is because the first 2 years is what you end up doing is what you would do as a master's student. So if I were to join in for a master's of vision science instead of a PhD, I would be taking a bunch of classes to learn all the basics of research, etc. And I would also be doing rotations. So one of the biggest strengths of PhD in USA is you do not come and decided on a project or on an advisor or mentor or supervisor, because over here it is considered like as a mini marriage. You cannot be in a lab that you are unhappy or under a mentor that does not work on your work style. And that is the most important part. Or even your lab colleagues, you have to, it's a long process. It's 5 years of duration, and you have to be happy during those 5 years. So what helps is every university that I know over here, if you come in for a PhD, they will let you go through certain rotations. Now, what is a rotation? Rotation is where you have like 8 to 10 weeks, maybe about 2 to 3 months of time in your first and second year, wherein you work in a lab. So you think that that person is someone you like, and their research work aligns your research interest, and you just join their lab. You do whatever they tell you for about 2 to 3 months time. You might get a tiny project done, or you might just help them in an experiment that is already going on. What is the major benefit of that is that you come to know what is their work ethic, how they like to work, and what is your interest, and if that aligns. And once you do that, UAB requires a minimum of 2 rotations before you decide a lab in a PhD. So you have to, and on an average, most students do 3. So after you've done that 10 to 12 weeks, you go on to another lab that you thought would be super in your area and you would like to join. And after you do that, you go to the third lab. And they let you do that on a shorter duration. Like if even after 3 rotations, you realize none of those lab work for you, or none of those mentors think that you are good enough or, make sense for their project, you keep on doing rotations until you find a fit. And that is the best part, is that you will not be stuck in a place that is not making you happy for the next 3 years. What feared me the most as an international student is like, one, I did not have ideas. My ideas were limited from India because I was like, well, I don't know if they have the money to do this. I don't know if they have the machines to do this. Does this make even sense? Or is anyone interested? And more important than that, after I came here, I realized work ethic matters. So my mentor has a very fluid work ethic. He doesn't care if I go to the lab in the middle of the night or come at 8 a.m. and work, as long as I get the work done in a certain time ratio. But I know some labs and some students also prefer a very structured timeline, wherein they come into the lab at 9, leave at 5. And if they come at 9:05 or 9:10, their mentors would not be happy about that. So, and some people like that structure in their life. So yeah, that is the biggest benefit. So that is the major difference, wherein the first 2 years, almost up to 2 years, you take your time finding out what you want to do and with whom you want to work. And then once you've decided on that mentor or that person will guide you to your project, like will help you what should be your goals and focus, and help you write that down. And that is why it helps skipping out, or not skipping out, but not having a master's, because you indirectly are doing all the things that a master's student would do anywhere else, basically.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keyur. I'd like to move to Mr. Asik Pradhan and ask you, as M.Phil is considered to be the road to PhD, so if anybody would wish to consider pursuing PhD after M.Phil, what would be the next step to do?
Well, it is just, I mean, as I already put forward, that M.Phil is a stepping stone for PhD. So basically, you need to work out the things that you did for masters, like when you were applying for Master of Philosophy. So all you have to do is like find your specific supervisor that aligns with your research interest, and then develop a mini research proposal. And like one of the limitation of doing a PhD in Australia is, I mean, as Keyur mentioned, like like you make a rotation until you find the best fit. So here you cannot do that. So you need to actually explore and do a I mean, you need to be proactive, and then you need to do your personal research initially to actually develop a proposal with your tentative supervisor, and then only reapply with all the formalities that you are required to do. So yeah, well, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Asik. I'd like to start from you again in terms of if the student, especially from South Asia, wants to pursue for a PhD or M.Phil. So what would your suggestion be? Where should they look into in terms of distance as well as quality, apart from where you are pursuing your education?
Well, let's not be so judgmental about which destination, which, I mean, that is perfect for you, because like it is not going to be your holiday destination. So like it's not going to matter whether, like, most of the time you'd be in your lab, and as Keyur mentioned earlier, like most of the time it does not matter for your supervisor, like whether you go in the middle of the night or like you will have your specific deadlines to complete and meet. So, well, I'd rather say that, like a place wherever you get a chance to explore about your research interest. So that's the favorable destination for you. And a very important thing is that like how your research interest aligns with the research interest of your chosen supervisor. And like the name of the institution is not very important, as you all very well know that like all the Nobel Prizes, they are not from John Hopkins, or they are not from Howard. So basically what the novelty that you're going to find out or do should be a translational one. So that would be the very important thing. So in my opinion, destination does not really matter. And the only thing is that you need to have the drive, the determination and perseverance to actually do the research.
Thank you, Mr. Asik. Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Ankit. We have a question from our audience for Ankit sir here. How would you weigh the PhD in India, specifically in optometry or vision science or so? And if you have any recommendations, could you please share that with our audiences?
Can you repeat the question? What
so our audience wants to know that how would you weigh the PhD in India, first of all? And any university recommendations?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so like first of all, thing is when you have done your masters from any recognized university, then you can see that you can contact the university directly, or you can contact the person who is what we call in the institutes who are offering the PhD. Like if you see in Gujarat, we have two institutes. One is Nagri and another is Bharti Maiya. Both these institutes have their own guide. So because they have their own guide, they have been affiliated with the university. So either you can contact them, or either you can directly contact to the university for further informations of PhD. So once you get the information of the dates, the dates for applications and how to apply, then you can apply for the PhD. And that is the thing, like for that you have to contact to certain persons who know when the gates have been opened for the entrance of the PhD.
I'd like to move to Mr. Nikhil Sharma now and ask you the same question.
It is very simple. Like first of all, I'm not getting what he is actually want to know.
He wants to know basically, the weight of the PhD in India, basically, first thing. And second thing, where would you recommend any students who wish to pursue PhD in India?
Like the recommendation, you should always see which university is having the government recognition. Like in India, we have private universities, we have government universities, we have deemed universities, and we have deemed to be universities. So just look for the NAC accreditation, just look the ratings of that university, and also look, see, what I believe is it is not important that from which university you are getting the PhD. The important thing is who is your guide, because if your guide is not supportive to you, it is very difficult for you to pursue PhD for your overall curriculum. And another thing is what topic you are going to select for PhD. So if like in my case, if you see that my topic is completely ophthalmological rather than optometric, so it is very difficult for me also to understand certain things in my PhD.
Thank you, Mr. Ankit. Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Nikhil Sharma here and ask you, where would you suggest South Asian students look into for pursuing their PhD program?
Well, I would recommend them to first develop a motivation and an interest if they want to pursue a PhD, because during a PhD, the graph goes like this. Sometimes you are excited, the other times you are depressed about what you're doing. Sometimes you have no idea what you are up to. So personal motivation and personal interest are the factors which will keep you motivated throughout the course. It should not be under any pressure or from advice from others. It should be your own motivation to go for a PhD. And if you want to really pursue a PhD, it should be your topic of interest. Always look for things that interests you. It's not like you're going for the available topics. Someone who doesn't have knowledge about the retina should definitely not go for retina. If you are into the anterior segment, if you love doing cornea, contact lenses, look for such topics. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Then what are the areas and specialties that one can think of for doing the PhD?
See, any part of the eye that interests you has a potential to be a research topic. And as of now, there are various studies going across the world for almost every subsection of the eye. You talk about myopia control, binocular vision, computer vision syndrome, tear film, ocular surface disorders. I mean, the list just goes on. It's just your own specific interest that catches your attention, and you should pay a certain focus to that. And obviously, a background literature review is a must so that you get to know what has already been done and what is under investigation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nikhil Sharma. Moving on to Mr. Keyur, what would your suggestion be for aspiring students who wish to pursue PhD to look into? What are the areas or specialties that one you would suggest they look into?
So as Nikhil mentioned, there is a wide variety of options. Most important is to find the drive and the motivation, and that only comes if you're working in the area that you're really passionate or interested about. But at the same time, at least from what I see, you should not even be limited to the eye. The eye is, as we all know, eye is just an extension of the brain. And if you can think of a neurological topic that interests you, that would have very little or no say or no impact on the eye as well. That like just broaden your horizons. Even especially in USA, as an optometrist, you might have a benefit if you go into the vision science program because it's an upper standing since you have some training, but you're not even limited to a PhD in vision science. Some of the optometrists I know that come from other countries go for a PhD in neurobiology or stem cell biology. So yeah, if you always had an interest to pursue genetics while you were growing up, and then somehow optometry happened and you want to go back to genetics, don't feel yourself limited. You can still apply to vision science programs and go and study genetics because for say myopia, which is my area of interest, there's a lot of interest in understanding the genetics there. And those students or those mentors probably have never seen a myopia patient in their life or like treating them. They were all with the cells. So yeah, understand your interest and then try and find universities where there are 2 or 3 advisors who work in that area of interest. And once you have that, you're good to go. So one of my friends working actually in pulmonary diseases, but we are in the same cohort in vision science. So yeah, her one tiny segment of her research is focusing on the differences that pulmonary disease will cause in the eye. But she got into a vision science PhD, and she realized that vision was not of her interest. And after those 2 years of rotations, etc., she finally figured out that she wants to study pulmonary diseases and lungs. So that is what she's doing. So yeah, don't feel limited, but passion and motivation, that is the most important criteria.
When you said initially, when you said that the students who wish to join PhD or masters, people are wary that they might change their passion midway through, so they do not want to just go through with that in the middle, and the college might lose on resources as well. So when you say you might go for something else, would the transition not be difficult in terms of funds?
So from my experience, the transition, the difficulty and the time, basically it's a question of time at that point, would depend on where you are in your PhD. So we had a student from India who joined last year or the year before to UAB, and his mentor or the one he was aspiring to work with left UAB and he couldn't find a fit for almost a year. And then the other mentor that he was he was like hoping that he would work with that. That person also ended up moving. And what he did was he moved universities with that other mentor. So he ended up joining Houston, which he had rejected in the first place to come to UAB because this other mentor whom he's aspiring to work with is going there. That approximately set him back by about 1 year, because at Houston, they said he has to start over from scratch again. And he had already spent 1 year here. I know certain students who have spent about three years building up their project. And in the third year, they lose funding for unseen reasons, or even there is one student who has had some family death and they had to go back and take a gap year, and when they come back, it's not all the same. So at that stage, starting from scratch would take you 3 additional years. Even if you try to salvage, you would still end up using 3 to 4 years more, because you would have to start another project from scratch and build upon that. So yeah, it just depends where you are in your PhD stage, because once you are past your candidacy, it's kind of no turning back. If things go wrong at that point, it's a no turning back stage. You either have to push through with whatever options you're given, or you most of the times you end up finishing somehow. But sometimes it may happen. I know a student who finished, who was 1 semester away from graduating, and they decided not to pursue it. And so after like 5 or something years of work, they decided it wasn't worth it. So I think, as I said initially, just look for your interest, because that is what, in all these circumstances, and especially circumstances like COVID, that is what will keep you pushing through. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Keyur. I'd like to move on to Mr. Asik and ask him the same question. What are the areas or specialties that you would suggest an aspiring student look into if they're thinking about pursuing a further degree?
Well, I would be a perfect fit for this particular example. A person who has had a lot of clinical experience as a clinical optometrist. I am actually doing a research in chronobiology. So, doing the stuffs with light, and then, trying to check whether or how the person is able to sleep and wake in terms of a specific disease. So see, like, the research interest tends to modify. Actually, I will not say it will change, but it can modify. So basically, yes, I had I had an interest for the electrophysiological test of the eye. So I was actually, developing some electrophysiological test, or non-invasive test to find out the photoreceptor dysfunction in specific eye disorders. But like, I happen to switch places and then jump into the higher areas of the brain. So basically, it's not only, you need to have your passion, but I would rather say you need your patience and perseverance for 3 important things when you are pursuing your Doctor of Philosophy. So the first thing is your search, the second thing is your experiment, and the third thing is you're going to elucidate a particular thing. So these 3 things.
Thank you, Mr. Asik. Now I'd like to go to Mr. Ankit and ask if he has to add anything towards any areas or specialties other than suggesting that suggesting that students look into their passion.
Okay, so if we talk in terms of India, India is not so developed in terms of PhD in optometry. So if you see the South India, you will see certain institutes like LV Prasad, they are actually doing very good research. But when you go towards North India and towards West India or East India, the researches are not as much as great or good in terms of optometry. So yes, in short, I can say that if you want to pursue PhD, you can go for either in sports vision or contact lenses in ortho-optics, or you can also opt for behavioral optometry or pediatric optometry. But yes, if you want to be more precise with that topic, you should first of all get to know which is your guide for that. Because as I have said, there are certain limitations in certain universities where you have very limited guides, and they are sometimes ophthalmologists, and with them, you need to create a symbiosis between them. So sometimes they will tell you that I'm not comfortable with certain topics, and I want you to go for this topic. So I think if you are interested in certain topics, you just talk with that. If you have a contact with the guide, you just talk beforehand the topic and ask him whether he can go for that or not. Otherwise, you have to definitely opt for what the guide is telling to you in India, like what we have seen. So yes, we have very limited amount of research in India available, as you all can also see, because I'm the only one in this panelist talking of India. Rest have gone to other countries to do the research. So yes, there is a limitation in India. But yes,
And
the thing is, India is developing in terms of education. We are not quite behind to all these things. So yes, in near to 5 to 10 years, you will see a good research in optometry as well. But see, we are lacking since many years. We were initially having diploma, then we have converted into bachelor's, and now I think each and every person who is opting for optometry are going for masters. So I think soon we will see that each and every person who is opting for masters will definitely pursue PhD. So yes, you have to keep faith in Indian optometry and the government, and definitely we will do the best in terms of research.
thank you, Mr. Ankit. Now I'd like to ask you a question. What differences did you find in the knowledge level between bachelor's, master's, and PhD?
Is this for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you can see that bachelor's is 4-year course, and at the time you will just get to know what is optometry and what are the subjects in optometry. So if you want to if you want to make your career in academics, or if you want to pursue for what we call further education, then and then only in India the participants are going for masters. And yes, definitely in masters, because it is a 2-year curriculum, you will definitely increase your knowledge and skill. Either it is clinical or your optical, or what you can say, that your knowledge, everything has been increased in masters. But when we talk of PhD, it is very specific to your topic. So the if you are doing a research on certain topic, your knowledge will be quite good in that topic. But if you take an optometry in an overall subject, it is not so that after doing PhD you are good in each and every topics of optometry or in research. So PhD is quite different than your what we call graduation and post graduation, because in PhD you are just going to do a research on particular topic rather than overall. So yes, you will good in your reviews, you will good in your researches, because what we believe that a good researcher can be a good clinician, because he know what is best for that, for his patient. So yes, you need to continue review your things in your daily OPDs and clinics. So for that you should be a good researcher. So yes, you should opt for PhD in that.
Thank
But
you.
I
Thank
think
you.
the okay, one second, I just want to
Please
say that
continue.
when you are when you want to go for PhD, you should have a clear aim and objective beforehand. Because when you are planning to open your optical store or clinic, optometry clinic in India, it will not make a major difference if you are PhD holder, or if you are working in certain eye hospitals in India, like private or what we call a government hospital. It will not make a great difference between your graduation, post graduation, and PhD. So if you are actually planning to be a good academician in future, then and then only I think you should go for a PhD in optometry. This is the
Thank you.
recent scenario what I have seen in India.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ankit. Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Nikhil Sharma and ask him what differences did he notice between his bachelor's, his master's, and his PhD.
I agree with Ankit that there is a significant difference of knowledge as you proceed with your education. During your master's, you have a wide exposure to different modules. You have to learn almost everything that there is in optometry. But as you progress towards PhD, your exposure to different things narrows down, but your knowledge to a specific topic, it widens up. So it's like a pyramid where you have a wider knowledge of your research topic, whereas a narrow field of exposure to other modules. And legend has it that at the end of your thesis, no one in this world knows more than your research topic but you. So that's a significant difference in knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Nikhil Sharma. Now I'd like to move to Mr. Asik Pradhan and ask you. You have done your bachelor's in Nepal and master's in India, I believe, and now you're pursuing your M.Phil in Australia. So, what were the differences that you have observed?
So basically, I'm still learning about the research. So if you are talking, like if I'm to comment anything about knowledge, then there is a humongous difference. So my previous speakers, they have already pointed out the basic difference. So I'll just add one more sentence that, like a master's or a doctor of philosophy is basically to perform a minute and a detailed work in a specific subject to answer the research gap. So that's the only thing. So it's just like a pyramid.
Thank you, Mr. Asik Pradhan. We have a question from our audience for Mr. Keyur here. So, Mr. Swam asks if it is possible to get admitted on Masters of Optometry in Alabama without the GRE, just with bachelor's degree and an English proficiency test.
So there is no such degree as Masters of Optometry, but I will take that as Masters of Vision Science. Yes, it is possible to get admitted. You would at UAB you would need, I think, 2 letters of recommendations. Basically 2 letters of recommendation and English proficiency and a statement of purpose which states why you want to do a master's. That would be, from my understanding, the minimum requirement, as long as you've had 16 years of education. So yes, for master's in vision science, yes, that is very well possible.
Thank you, Mr. Keyur. One more question that I would like to ask you is, we have basically 2 different routes while pursuing higher education from bachelor's, and that is, it would be either master's and then PhD or OD. So how different are these degrees in terms of what they provide you with? And who should pursue what?
So master's and PhD kind of fall into one bucket. In USA, from a long-term perspective, unless you have other plans already, I would not advise master's for 2 reasons. One, it is horrendously expensive and you have to pay your way through the master's, whereas on the PhD part, it is funded and they pay you for doing the PhD. So that is an additional plus. But apart from that, academically, as I've already mentioned, master's is like a preliminary to a PhD. Unless you have already citizenship or any other degree, it's very difficult to work out your job perspective as a master's, because there aren't many things that you would have freedom to do, whereas PhD opens up a lot of scope. But an OD degree, that is, I think, a replication of what a bachelor's of optometry in some of the Southeast Asia countries would be like. So you would learn basically all the basics of optometry, starting from jaw mobs, anatomy, physiology, all the way to ocular diseases and internship. So except for the fact that over here, basic, at least in contrast to India, you are allowed to prescribe certain drugs and all of that. So there is a lot more detail on those front. But apart from that, I think an OD is just a replication or a repetition of most of that information. If you want to work as an optometrist in USA, you have to get yourself an OD degree. And there are a lot of ways of doing that. But yeah, that is the basic differentiation. And after an OD, yes, you can always go for a PhD. But again, those are 2 different skill sets. And as an OD, you will be eligible to teach or practice as a clinician. But as PhD, from what I've heard from everyone else as well, yes, you would get a lot of in-depth focused knowledge. But at UAB, one of the things that they focus most on during a PhD, you learn how to teach yourself. So the idea is that if someone tells me tomorrow that I have to work not on this area or not on this topic, or I have to learn this skill set, I learn how to teach myself that skill set. And that's what research is about. So if there is an area or topic that I don't know anything about, I know the way to get to become an expert in that area over the span of time. So that's more of research focus, whereas OD is just what you would see as an optometrist in India.
So if a student would wish to pursue OD, then what would they have to do, if you have any idea regarding that?
So there are multiple paths. For you to finally get an OD, you have to sit through 3 board exams that are national in USA, and I believe they also include Canada. So these are the board exams, and that is your ultimate goal. However, you can sit through all those 3 board exams. Well, but on the contrary, they haven't made it easy. So even if I know all the information to clear those board exams, I cannot just go and sit for them because I need to be sponsored. By sponsored, I mean I need a state, like the state of Alabama, like the government itself, or a accredited university like the School of Optometry at UAB or any other university in USA or Canada to say that yes, the student we are sponsoring or we are saying that he or she can sit for these exams. And that is the tricky part. No school or state will approve unless they are very confident on your ability. So because as if you end up sitting for the exam and you tend to fail or get lower scores, that will reduce their average for their school or university, and that makes them less competitive to other schools. And that is where a lot of difficulty arises. Recently, since I have come here in the past 3 years, I think at this stage, almost all schools of optometry are accepting international students. What you would need primarily is to sit down or write an OAT, which is an optometry admission test. 16 years of education, of course, the basic requirement, and an OAT. As an international student, you would also need English proficiency. Some schools also accept just GRE, but GRE, that you would have to find out from the school if they are okay with a GRE instead of an OAT. But yeah, all of these, along with letters of recommendation and an SOP, I believe, and you can apply for an optometry school. However, keep in mind, optometry is way more expensive than master's is. The minimum I have heard for international students, if you are to go through the 4-year program, is 200,000, which is, I believe, $2 lakh, comes up to in crores, I believe, in rupees. So if you're not planning to stay back, or if you don't have a short way of staying back and working here in the United States, that's a very clear answer to sign your doom in your career, because there is no way you can recoup that much amount of money in a developing country. So, but other than that, there are shorter pathways. So universities have realized that, well, I already have all the training. I don't need to sit through job ops and anatomy, physiology, and retinoscopy and things like that. So 7 universities, from my latest understanding, have developed sort of these advanced standing program or abridged version. And there are different names from different universities, wherein you can somehow prove your proficiency. So one of the universities, Salus University in Pennsylvania, asks you to, they will sponsor you for the first part of the exam. So there are 3 exams for the boards, and they will sponsor you for the first exam. And if you clear all the subjects or topics in that exam, they would help you skip through the initial 1.5 to 2 years. If you fail one topic, they will ask you to take that one topic only, and you don't have to do the whole 2 years. Of course, if you don't clear anything, you have to start from scratch. UAB is also in midst of developing certain program. I know NICO, which is New England College of Optometry in Boston, also has a 2-year advanced standing program and a 3-year for someone who has a PhD, and a 2-year one if you have certain clinical experience already in India. So yeah, it's not regulated, and hence there is no clear pathway, but there are options wherein you can skip the first 2 years and just join in the 3rd year and the 4th year, which saves you a lot of time and money getting your OD degree in USA.
Thank you, Mr. Keyur. I'd like to move to Mr. Nikhil Sharma now and ask you, because we have heard a lot about research when we talk about PhD. So what is the curriculum really like? Is PhD just all about research? And if there are examinations, what are they like?
So universities here in the UK have a dedicated administrative section who acts as an umbrella for all the doctoral students, named as the graduate school. So any PhD candidate has to go some sort of annual progression where they represent their work that has been done in a year. So it's like when you join a PhD, within a month you have to submit a kind of RDC1 form, which stands for Research Degrees Committee, where you confirm that you have a project in place, you have your supervisor and your supervisory team, and then you move on to your ethics. And then after 9 months, you have a type of a mini viva, where an external examiner assesses your capability, your potential to progress as a doctoral candidate. And then every year, you have to submit an annual report of what work you have been doing and how much progression have you made.
Thank you, Mr. Nikhil. Now I'd like to move to Mr. Asik Pradhan and ask you what differences did, what is the curriculum like in M.Phil and how it is different from PhD?
Well, it is pretty much similar to what we have here in Australia for PhD. So basically, like as Nikhil pointed out earlier, so you have different stages of your candidature. So once you enroll, you need to finish with your, like within 3 months, you need to have your mini proposal ready. And before you, before you move ahead with your stage 2, and so you need to finish up with your research skills, and you have this graduate research student research center that looks after your developments. And after 6 months, you need to submit your proposal. Then you reach to your stage 2, and you need to apply for your ethics. And then once you have your ethics approval from the institutional review committee, and then only you are allowed to actually start your data collection. And at the end, you have to deliver your final confirmation seminar, and then you defend your thesis. And then only, like, based on the expert panel, so you'll be given the degree.
Any written exam or so?
Oh, no, nothing. So there is nothing called pass or fail. So after all, you are going to just prove or disprove your null hypothesis. That's it.
Okay, so it is pretty much research based.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything that you would like to add, Mr. Ankit?
So just to summarize all this thing, in India, if when you have been selected for the PhD topic, then every 6 months you need to submit your research progress report to the university with the duly signed a copy of your guide. So it means that your guide has sanctioned that you are doing progress continuously, and it is up to date, and it is quite good. So every 6 months you need to submit the research progress report. Then because it is a minimum 3-year course of PhD, so after the end of 5th semester, you can submit your synopsis to the university, where it is a sort of mini thesis or research which has been submitted to the university. And after that, it has been decided that you can submit your thesis or main thesis after 6 months. So after that, if now the another thing is, once your thesis has been submitted to the university, your university will send it to the examiners which are outside that state. So your state examiners will not check the PhD of that state. Okay, so after that, if it has been approved, then and then only they will ask you to go for the viva exams. Or if it has been rejected, either they will ask you to make some necessary change which is seen in that research. So they will give you some time, like 1 or 2 months, to change the necessary things. And if it has been found quite normal, then they will again take your viva. So at the time of viva, what they will see is, like they will have the experts, like one will be the dean of the university, another will be your guide, and 2 of them will be the subject experts. So they will see all the things which has been there in the research, and after that, if it is found normal, then they will give you the what we call approval for PhD. So there is nothing like pass or fail, as Asik sir has said. There is just whether it has been rejected or approved your thesis. So
okay, pretty much
yeah,
similar. Again, research based, but we have a little something called viva right here.
Yeah.
Okay, anything that you would like to add, Mr. Keyur?
As everyone's mentioned, there is a checklist of things you have to finish before you do your candidacy or your proposal, mini proposal. There is no timeline though over here. You could do it in 6 months and you could do it in 3 years. And once you do that, there are a bunch of things they have to do to make sure your project goes ahead and all the paperwork, etc., which is not difficult at all. And in the end, you have something called as a defense, proposal defense. And I think for both the thesis defense and the proposal defense. So for the candidacy proposal defense and the thesis defense, it's more like an oral exam, or not an exam, but sort of a presentation of your work. And there is, again, it's not pass or fail, but I think the two criteria, at least at UAB and most across USA and Canada, they look for is, one is how much is your knowledge, how much is your level of knowledge, and two, they will build you up on questions from, especially in the private defense, they would build you up with questions starting from the basic level all the way till the higher level. These are all experts in the field. Your committees basically have been working in the field for like a couple of years, and you have to reach a level where you fail. You can't know everything, and that is the goal, is to make you realize that you don't know everything yet, and you will never know everything. And the second thing that they look for is how you accept that defeat. The other thing in USA is that PhD gives a lot of pride to a lot of people, and they want to make sure that you can gracefully accept that you don't know something. And so those are the two things that they primarily look for. Of course, you have to have done some work in your PhD, and which your mentor will guide you, but there is no 6 months review or a yearly review. It just depends on your mentor and you.
Okay, so the time frame is not as strict as it would have been in India.
No, yeah, as I said, it is very fluid, and it depends on your mentor and university.
Again, so no written exam.
Depends on the university. At UAB, your thesis and the proposal itself is called a written exam, but it's not an exam. I get like 2 months to write my proposal and probably 4 years to write my thesis. It's not really an exam.
All right, thank you, Mr. Keyur. Now we're going to take a question from our audience. This is specifically directed to Mr. Keyur and Mr. Nikhil here. So what are the barriers you found after passing from an Indian university, moving on overseas university in terms of economical background or in terms of cultural differences?
I would let Nikhil to go forward.
Mr. Nikhil.
Right. Thank you, Keyur. The first barrier that I came across was the language. Scottish accent is a bit kind of hard to understand. So that was something which took me a couple of weeks to undergo. But if you talk about level of education, I think there is something called lack of statistics in Indian optometry curriculum, which here in the UK is focused more on. A student in his master's or in his PhD is required to kind of do his own statistics. Obviously, he can take some assistant from people working in the department, but then they also assess you towards the knowledge that you have in statistics. Apart from that, optometry over here is more of evidence-based. So if you're doing something, they tell you not to refer to books, rather you refer to journal articles, especially peer-reviewed journal articles, so that you can have an updated knowledge with regards to your particular topic.
Thank you, Mr. Nikhil. Similarly, moving on to Mr. Keyur, how would you summarize your experience in terms of the difference culturally as well as economically?
So culturally, I think Nikhil has already pointed out language and statistics. There are resources available at all universities to help you overcome your lack of knowledge in whatever area you are. Also, I feel most students applying for PhD in USA, the US citizens primarily, know a lot more about the workings of research, like how to read an article, what you're looking for when you're reading an article, things like that. So that takes a lot of time. It's a skill set and you have to take some time to build it. And the biggest thing I feel other students lack is from India culturally is we are afraid to ask for help. Don't know the reason. Even I personally was just afraid to ask for help. But I think one of the most important thing is to go out there and tell, yes, I don't know this and I'm terrible at this. Can someone help me, please? And writing is one of the things that has personally affected me a lot. Then that is a part of language. But yes, you have to be able to communicate via writing, because research is all about publications, abstracts, journal articles. Economically, I would say my barriers weren't much. I can estimating like approximately 2 lakh Indian rupees is what you would need to go through the application fees, the GRE, the TOEFL fees, your flight money, your visa money, etc. As long as you're willing to put all the work by yourself. If you're going for a counselor, etc., you would need their fees as well. But if you're doing all the work by yourself, that would be the minimum you would need. Once you come here, the first month you might need some money for rent and food, approximately, depending on the area you go. That might vary, but after that they start paying you, and everything's taken care of.
And how difficult is it to adapt to a new, a new shift in the environment?
Everyone has their own experience. Make sure that you learn the things that you love the most. By that I mean, some people love Indian food and they crave for it. And depending on which city you are in, Birmingham is not a very big city. It's very hard to find decent Indian food. So yeah, learn the things that you love the most. Other than that, it's a different cultural experience in sense of like in India, I'm from Mumbai, and getting dhania is like go down and get it in 5 minutes. It doesn't work like that over here. You have to plan a trip and you have to go to Walmart, which is approximately like 15-20 kilometers away. You need a car. If you don't have a car, you have to request for a ride. So it's a lot of learning. And the first 6 months are tough. And most universities are realizing that, and hence they're giving first 6 months, at least UAB, the structure has changed, wherein the first 6 months have very light course load, etc., to make sure that the students are settled in and comfortable. And there are resources almost everywhere. So it's just a matter of how fast and how good you are at asking help. So yeah, it is, I'm not going to say it's a cakewalk, but at the same time, it is very, very, very much manageable.
Thank you, Mr. Keyur. I'd like to go to Mr. Asik Pradhan and ask him, over his career spanning over a decade, you have been to different countries, ranging from Maldives to India as well as Qatar. And how would you sum up your experience in adapting to a different environment?
Well, the first and foremost thing that I would like to comment is that you need to find the right environment and the right bunch of people to support you. So that's the main thing, and you need to actually readily accept that the quickly changing environment around you. So based on that, like you need to be able to camouflage, or you need to learn certain skills and try to adapt more quickly and freely. So like you should not be hesitant to ask that. I mean, as Keyur rightly pointed out, like most of the people, like most of the people coming from the South Asian background, they're really hesitant to talk, especially like and apart from that, like people with these different sort of accents, as Nikhil mentioned earlier, like the Scottish accent. Similarly, you have here the Australian accent. It is so hard to actually crack the thing. Like I used to have, like I remember, like when I initially had meeting, like in the initial few meetings with my supervisor, I hardly could figure out like what he was trying to explain to me, like so well, yeah. So the thing is that the very important thing, like you should be able to agree and accept what the environment around you is trying to give you. And well, the rest is you, like how quickly you can grasp it. It is all about you.
And where was it most easier to adapt to?
Oh, definitely, yes. Well, definitely for a like for South Asian people, it would be quite easy for us to adapt within the South Asian countries. Like in India or Maldives, it's much more easier because people, they are more like brothers and sisters, and like the sense of brotherhood is there. So that's much more easier. Well, and even here as well, even in QUT, like most of the overseas students, they're basically from India and Nepal, and it doesn't really feel that I'm out of my hometown. You know, like everywhere we just talk in our native language, or just English is just a form of thing that we write in our documents. So most of the time we are just in our friendly environment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Asik. Now we have officially arrived towards the end of the panel discussion. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists for a wonderful discussion today and great insights. And I hope our audience listening to us today have also immensely enjoyed the discussion. So before wrapping up, I'd like to ask our panelists about anything that like to add that we might have missed today, or any last words for our audiences, starting from Mr. Ankit.
Okay, so one more thing that I want to add on, like if you see the fee structures, am I okay? So if you see the fee structures in India, so there are two universities. One is private, another is government university. So if you see the fee structure in government universities for PhD, it is almost about 40 to 50,000 for overall curriculum. So it is very like it is very less amount that you can pay for any degree courses. But when you opt for any private universities, the overall fees is almost about 2 to 3 lakhs. So now it is all up to you whether you want to go for government universities or private universities. But yes, if you are opting for government universities, the resources are very less. Even you will see that there are very limited amount of guides available in that particular university. So you need to you need to, I think, like if you say in terms of resources, you need to the expenses are quite more because of less resources in government universities, while in private universities they offer you the resources. So the overall I can say that the fees are almost equal in India. But the thing is, the facilities, like government universities will offer you less facilities in terms of the resources, while private universities will have more resources. Again, another thing is, like if you want to opt for PhD, the minimum things that are necessary, the criteria are, you need to have the documents. Like one is the migration certificate from your last attended university. Okay, so like if you have gone for masters from certain university, you need to take the migration certificate. Another thing is passing and degree certificate is necessary. The third thing is all the mark sheets from bachelor's to masters are necessary. And the proof, like any of your ID, like your pan card or your Aadhaar card is necessary. And NOC, if you are opting for a part-time or if you are opting for an independent research, you need to take an NOC from that institute. So these are the minimum criteria that has been necessary to select your PhD in optometry in India. So this is the thing that I want to share. And as I have said earlier, that if in India, if you want to be a professor after 2021, it is mandatory to have PhD. So like if those who are listening to my topic, you all, like if you want to pursue professorship in future, you should go for PhD right now only. So that is an important thing that I want to share. So this was the thing that I would like to share. And I am thankful to you all for sharing your views, Mr. Nikhil, Mr. Keyur, and Mr. Asik. And hope all will have certain good knowledge after the end of this session. And be safe and be in quarantine where you are. And thank you, Manasvi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ankit, for your kind words. Moving on to Mr. Keyur, I would like to ask you if you have any final words for our audiences, or if you'd like to add anything to the discussion.
I think the most important thing I would like to add is understand that research is about failure. And this is something that I understood very early on and has helped me a lot to work through it. It's all about failure. There are very few and far between successes. And you have to be able to work through those failures. And also it starts with asking help and realizing that you're not the ultimate authority or you don't know everything. And with that, any aspiring students or people who wish to pursue these careers, I would suggest there are a lot of people already out there who have kind of walked on that path, if not exactly your path. So feel free to reach out. One might not answer, two might not answer, but the third one will. And that's where learning about understanding failure starts. yeah, you have to keep knocking doors until one door opens up. So that, I think, are the two most important things. And it's very important to connect with people and understand what they have gone through to make sure that you are able to plot out your path or your way. Having said that, I appreciate what ForOptom is doing. I so wished that there was such a platform 4 years ago. My life would have been easier, a lot more easier. So thank you, Manasvi, and thank you ForOptom for this wonderful opportunity. At the same time, thank you to all the panelists. I have myself learned a lot about PhDs across the world, which I was ignorant until right now. So yeah, thank you everyone, and stay safe and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words, Mr. Keyur. Similarly, I'd like to ask Mr. Asik Pradhan here about his last words, anything that he would like to share with us today, or anything that he would like to tell the audience.
Well, yes, just a summary that any aspiring optometrist, you should actually actively seek out the information about your higher career. And the first and foremost thing, the very important thing that you need to understand is that a PhD program is not simply a continuation of your undergraduate program. And the name of the institution is not that important. And you need to really develop your time management skills, that you need to, be time specific, and you need to learn the research skills. And there are no any real breaks. So it's not like a mandatory 9 to 5 job that you do in your research.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Asik. I'd like to move to Mr. Nikhil Sharma here and ask him if anything there is anything you would like to add that we might have missed out today, or any last words that you would have for our audiences.
Well, most of the things have been said by my fellow panelists. I would just like to add that if you think that you're missing on a specific set of skills, there are dedicated workshops organized by the university itself, which focuses on enhancing those skills. So always go and seek advice from your mentors, from your supervisors. That really helps a lot. And stay safe during this pandemic. And thank you to everyone who organized this session. We didn't have any facility a couple of years ago, as Keyur said, but it was good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words, Mr. Nikhil Sharma. And thank you again to all of our panelists here today, Mr. Nikhil Sharma, Mr. Asik Pradhan, Mr. Keyur Savla, and Mr. Ankit Varshney. We cannot thank you enough for giving us, as well as any aspiring students who's wishing to pursue further education in optometry and is just confused about what to do next. I am pretty sure that they have learned something of value today from here. And thank you for joining me today for the ForOptom's Optometry Updates Expert Live Panel Discussion. The session is live on YouTube and shall remain on the platform if any of our viewers wish to revisit it or have missed any part of the discussion. And I would also like to thank our audience for being here with us today and for the love and support that our audiences have shown to us and ForOptom. And we will be back in the future with more programs, sessions, panel discussions, and so on. And on that note, I would like to end the session here. Stay tuned for more programs by ForOptom. You can also visit us at www.foroptom.com and also join us on social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe to our channel ForOptom on YouTube. And this is your host, Manashvi, signing off for now. Stay home, stay safe, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we off air?